Well, hey guys, how you doing? It's Saturday morning and I just come back from a bike ride and I just wanted to show you a little clip from my bike ride because I was trying to do one of those really cool kind of selfies while you're on your bike, but it didn't really end up that cool. So just check this out. Well, this is my day today, getting out cycling. It's pretty cool. It's a nice day, good time to get fit. Hope you're having a good day, whatever you're doing. Yeah, so what happened there was I was doing the recording, I was looking at my phone and I was too busy looking at my phone, and when I actually looked up, there was actually a chain that was strung right across the driveway that I was going down, and I had to jam on the brakes really fast or I actually would have gone over the handlebars, and it would have been quite funny to have actually done it, but it would have been quite painful, so I'm kind of glad that it didn't happen. But it just kind of made me think. After I came home, I was just thinking about having a bit of a chat with you guys, and I thought about the whole thing of barriers, and then I started to think about boundaries. And it's really important that we keep an eye on boundaries, but that we try not to build barriers. What's the difference? Well, boundaries keep people safe, and they keep people safe in a good way. They protect relationship. A boundary is about where you stop and I start. It's about knowing that. It's about caring for people's vulnerable spots. For example, boundaries in close quarters. Man, we're all living together. We're all in each other's pockets right at the moment. And I can imagine that maybe you're finding tensions building at times, and particularly if you haven't got a very big space to live in and you're with a few others. And so it's so important that we respect each other's boundaries, that we respect each other's need for space, that we're being thoughtful, that we're considering others and their feelings, that we're actually communicating our own feelings and our needs. But it's really important with boundaries that we actually learn to communicate those boundaries. In scripture, you don't find that there's a whole lot that actually talks specifically about boundaries, but there's a whole lot that talks about relationship and how to work together and be together in a relationship. I mean, here's a couple of verses. John 13:34 says, "Now I'm giving you a new commandment. Love each other just as I have loved you. You should love each other." And so that's Jesus speaking. Romans 12 says, "Don't just pretend that you love others, but really love them. Hate what's wrong. Stand on the side of good. Love each other with genuine affection and take delight in honoring each other." Now, those verses don't specifically mention boundaries, but they do talk about how to be with each other. They talk about being authentic in our love. It talks about caring for each other with genuine affection and actually taking delight in honoring each other. And, boundaries actually are about honor. They actually honor who somebody is, and so they don't push their way in. Love, well, there's that whole scripture about love in 1 Corinthians 13, and talks about love being selfless. It talks about love being kind. Love is patient. All of those things are about ways to treat each other and to know, where those lines of relationship are and how to operate in a relationship. And, it's really important with boundaries not to assume that people know where your boundary lies. People are not necessarily mind readers. We actually need to set those out of a heart to protect relationship. And we also need to respect when boundaries have been communicated to us. And so boundaries fundamentally honor and protect relationships. Well, it's a little bit different though with barriers, because barriers, I was at the supermarket the other day, and as we're going into the supermarket, there's like these 2 meter distances between people as they go in. In the supermarket, there's major distances between, the checkouts. You have to have your trolley at the end of the aisle, so there's a barrier there. You get to the checkout, and they've erected this perspex barrier where the person in the checkout is operating behind so that they're not catching something. And so barriers, they're also for safety, but those are often fear-based. And so when you look in the book of Genesis, Adam and Eve, when they took the fruit that God said that they shouldn't, and they listened to the devil, it says that they realized that they were naked. And so before that, they didn't think there was anything wrong with that. They didn't think there was anything to hide. But it wasn't just a physical nakedness. there was actually a vulnerability about them. And when they actually sinned and they took the fruit, they realized that something wasn't quite right, and they felt afraid. And so what they did is they made fig leaves into clothes, and then they heard God coming in the garden, and they actually hid. And God asked them, he said, "Why are you hiding?" And Adam said, I was naked and I was afraid, so I hid. And God says, "Who told you that? Who told you that you were naked?" And so what they actually did is, out of fear, because they had done something wrong, they felt afraid to expose themselves. And it's like they were afraid to be vulnerable, and so they didn't know that they would be loved in that place. And I think that's often the reason that we put up barriers, is that we're afraid that people won't love us if they really knew us. If you really knew me, then you wouldn't really love me. And so when somebody puts up a barrier, they stonewall you, or they become like a hedgehog, they get all prickly and they curl up, or they become like an ostrich and they just kind of, put their head in the sand and they kind of pretend, that everything's, okay. They try to hide away from the world, I guess. Or a rhino, they actually charge, and so they can have that anger. But that's often a barrier. And it's often a bruise that they're trying to protect, or a fear, like I say, that, if you really knew me, you wouldn't really love me. And ironically, when we do that, when we erect a barrier, we actually keep out the very love that is actually going to heal us in relationship. And so it's really important that we actually learn to let people into our spaces. And that actually takes time to trust people. It's about being vulnerable, because we actually do need people. God hasn't created us to be islands. We're actually designed for relationship. But often when there's fear, we wrap ourselves up, we create a barrier, but in doing so, we're actually protecting ourselves from the very love that we need, that's actually going to heal us. We're not meant to be islands. I was talking with my family the other day, and I said, hey, we're in isolation together. Let's not be islands on our devices, in our rooms. Like, sure, we have our own time and our own space, but let's make sure that we make the most of being a family, that we have family time, that we do eat together at the table at least once a day, that we're having some fun together. And, I think also what we can do is we can erect barriers to God. I wonder, are you letting God into your space? It's like Adam and Eve protected themselves. They were afraid to be real with God. Well, if you know that you're loved, then you can actually be real. And I remember I was going through some stuff, and God actually said to me, he said, "Why don't you talk to me about your pain instead of carrying it alone?" And I thought, that's a really good question. God, why aren't I doing that? And I realized I believed that maybe that he might reject me, or that actually it wouldn't make a difference talking to him, or, does he really care about that? And when you're in that space, you start to think things which aren't always good thoughts. Oftentimes we do that in relationship with people. We start to think negative thoughts. We spiral into a negative place. And we think, well, those people don't really care me. Nobody loves me. Nobody cares about me. Everybody hates me. And so often those thoughts are not actually based in truth. They're just based in emotion. And so we put up barriers, but we end up in a prison of our own making. So I actually had a barrier with God. But what I did is I chose to let that go. And I actually let him in. And I actually found and encountered his love. So I want to encourage you today, keep an eye on boundaries. As we're in close quarters with each other, keep an eye on those boundaries, look after each other, be good to each other. But also try not to build barriers. Try to let those barriers down and let people into your space, let people into your world. It's a bit different at the moment because we're all separated. We've got these physical barriers where we can't actually, be close to each other, except for those you're living with. But, it's cool. We can use these devices here, and we can actually maintain relationship and find a new way of being. And so I want to encourage you with that. Both to remember boundaries, communicate your boundaries, but try not to build barriers, and have great relationships. And use this time to actually go deep and build relationships with people. So, hey, God bless you. Hope you're having a really, really great Monday. We will catch you again soon. See you.